All right, this is an interesting topic. Our teams are adapting to this new technology, and it's kind of a deeply personal issue. I've talked to some customers where they might be fearful that AI is coming for your job or it might replace certain things. So I appreciate us talking about this topic candidly. I'm also going to share a video, some customer examples, and the goal of this session is to have a framework to think about how to incorporate AI and the new technologies into your existing teams. So that's the goal of this, and we don't claim to have all the answers, but I do hope to share a few stories. Quick introduction. I lead our customer success team as the Director of Customer Success. My name is Luke Diaz. I see some familiar faces in the audience. So thank you so much for traveling to Dallas and also spending time away from your families and just spending some time with us. So we really appreciate it. So does anyone here listen to podcasts? A few folks? Yeah? Okay. So last month I was listening to an episode of a podcast I've been liking. It's called All In. And these four gentlemen on the right, they all have really interesting business backgrounds, but they happen to interview Sam Altman from OpenAI. And part of what he said is germane to the topic at hand. So I wanted to share a quick video. It's actually about 1.5 minutes, so I appreciate you bearing with, and hopefully the audio plays well.
There's like and then when you hear people like talk about the AI future, they imagine there's sort of two different approaches, and they don't sound that different, but I think they're like very different for how we'll design the system in practice. There's I want an extension of myself. I want like a ghost or an alter ego or this thing that really like is me, is acting on my behalf, is responding to emails, not even telling me about it, is sort of like, it becomes more me and is me. And then there's this other thing, which is like, I want a great senior employee. It may get to know me very well. I may delegate it. You know, you can like have access to my email and I'll tell you the constraints, but I think of it as this like separate entity. And I personally like the separate entity approach better and think that's where we're going to head. And so in that sense, the thing is not you, but it's like a always available, always great, super capable assistant, executive.
It's an agent in a way, like it's out there working on your behalf and understands what you want and anticipates what you want, is what I'm reading into what you're saying.
I think there'd be agent-like behavior, but there's like a difference between a senior employee and an agent.
Yeah.
And like, I want it, you know, if I think of like one of the things that I like about a senior employee is they'll push back on me. They will sometimes not do something I ask, or there sometimes will say like, I can do that thing if you want, but if I do it, here's what I think would happen, and then this and then that, and are you really sure? I definitely want that kind of vibe, which not just like this thing that I give a task and it blindly does.
It can reason.
Yeah.
So in that short clip, Sam Altman's talking about different ways that AI could impact our teams. And I really like how he talks about this really good senior employee that is on your team. And so I wanted to use that as a jump-off point for this presentation to talk a little bit about what that might look like and some frameworks that we could do to successfully adopt and welcome AI, if you will. So I'm curious, I think we all have high performers on our team, right? When I think of my team at AppSend, there's certainly people that stand out as that really good senior employee. I threw a few bullet points up on the slide, but if anyone would shout out, when you think of a really good senior employee, are there any traits that you think of that you would hope to see in an AI model? Does anyone have any ideas? Critical thinking. That's a good one. Any other traits or characteristics? Cultural awareness. That's a good one. Thank you. So if we add critical thinking and cultural awareness to this list, you might also think of a really good employee as really knowing the domain, spending a lot of time with the SOPs or the standard operating procedures, being able to acquire this institutional knowledge. I don't know about you, but some of my more senior employees, they also have this like intuition where they can like look around the corner a little bit and anticipate like, something doesn't look right. And they can almost they have a better sense of risk in flagging those issues. And then when things do happen, they have the ability to remediate that and take action and resolve it. So these are just some things to think about as a really good senior employee. Let's talk about the theme of prediction. So a lot of the technology that we have at AppSen and a lot of the AI technology right now has to do with prediction. Most of you may know this, but the entire LLM model or ChatGPTs of the world, they're probabilistic. They're trained on all this data and they're probabilistically predicting what the next letter, the next word, or the next token is. So prediction is part and parcel to this topic and what we would hope to add to our workforces. It's also a key ingredient for decision making. And as we've seen prediction get better and better and better, we've actually seen a lot of these models mirror human decision making to a better degree. It's not perfect, but it's getting there, where we're like, wow, okay, I could see how, given these criteria, these constraints, the AI workforce, I would actually trust it to do this set of work. Maybe right now it's remedial tasks, maybe it's more data entry stuff, but the ability to predict is getting quite powerful. There's 3 things that are unique about right now. We've kind of conquered the cloud and we have unlimited storage, which removes a massive constraint that existed just 5 to 10 years ago. The second piece of that is we have crazy amount of compute. So compute is what's running on and training all these models. We have the ability to do near unprecedented compute. So it could take the entire petabyte training data in your company's ERP and literally train on it in a few hours. It's incredibly powerful. And then if anyone's been following the NVIDIA stock price recently, we know that there's quite a boom going on there. Their H100s are the top grossing, most popular GPU on the planet right now. And these chip innovations have just unleashed unparalleled parallel processing capabilities. They can go from anywhere from 30 to 60 grand, depending on where you're buying an H100. And NVIDIA is not the only player. There's a whole league of startups trying to also figure out chip design. So one way to think about AI systems is these really nuanced and interesting prediction machines. So as we've talked about a really good senior employee, as Sam Altman says, we'd like to throw out a definition, like what is this AI workforce? So it's a collection of artificial intelligence systems and technologies, and they produce human-like output. But here's the critical thing. What we would propose is that these systems, whether you consider them a team member or an extension of your team, they can be monitored, overseen by a non-technical person. You don't have to do debugging. You don't have to go and inspect Python code. All of us, speaking only for the non-technical folks, you'd be able to manage this AI workforce without having to know code. So that's what we would put out there as a proposed definition for this AI workforce, with a special emphasis on non-technical human oversight. There's certain tasks that are extremely well suited for AI, and we've talked about some of them already. Manual data entry, validating ERP. You look at some employees and they're going like this with 2 different fields or systems. AI is really well suited for that because it can do it so fast with high accuracy. As Kunal and Anant mentioned, we have some really interesting document detection and some models that do document and data comparison. And then perhaps near and dear to our heart, there's a lot of audit and compliance checks. Really great tasks for AI, right? scanning 10,000 receipts or 10,000 invoices and looking for things that might be in violation of a certain law, a regulation, or your internal compliance documents. And of course, fraud. We have had some customers that have uncovered fraud rings in their employees. They were submitting, they're kind of figuring out how to submit expense reports fraudulently to get more money. And it's kind of sad and tragic, but it's part of the business. Like, we have these rules in place for a reason, and we have had some customers had to part ways with employees due to that fraud detection. Great task for AI, and transitioning to the human element, there are some things that are still squarely in the human camp. So as you think about your teams and the various tasks that they do day to day, we feel confident that things like relationship building and negotiation, they feel pretty squarely in the human camp right now. I haven't met an AI model that is really well versed in negotiation or building relationships. I don't have any AI friends. I probably talk to ChatGPT-4 more than I should. But I wouldn't say we have a relationship. Strategic thinking and intuition, these are things we talked about after the Sam Altman segment, but that really good senior employee, humans still far surpass intuition within certain domains. Who mentioned critical thinking? Was it? Yeah, so this concept of creative problem solving, do you consider those similar?
Absolutely. Being able to navigate through the gray, right?
Yeah, especially in larger companies. A lot of you work for publicly traded large companies, and navigating the internal stakeholders to actually solve a problem, it's actually more of a human problem and a collaboration problem than code and documents and numbers. I have not met an AI model that can get up and lead or motivate. Maybe one day, but that's still something that feels very human in the human camp. And then also conflict resolution between employees. You mentioned, was it cultural nuance and sensitivity? There's still, I think when Gemini was released, there was a lot of cultural things that kind of came out that were a little strange with the model. There are some things that someone queried, show me a picture of this, and it was totally not that. So there's still some cultural nuances where the machine learning models and AI totally misses the boat. Yeah.
Actually didn't mean DEI cultural awareness. I meant your business culture. It's very different from company to company.
That's a great call. I think I heard someone describe the disparate cultures of Amazon versus an Apple, right? Amazon, very cost conscious, right? They care about the cost of the smallest thing, trying to save margin. And then there's a company like Apple that has $2,000 doorknobs because design is king. And cost is just one example, but do other examples come to mind with business culture?
Well, if you have, for example, several subsidiaries, you might have different risk tolerances within each one, or different communication norms.
I see.
Or just, differences in the way that you interact with certain segments of your business versus others.
Gotcha. So the geographical or business division nuance?
It could be that, if you're in a conglomerate, you have different industries. What is normal in the construction or transportation industries might not be in a financial institution.
Very well said. And your name and where you work?
I'm Barbara, and I work at Clayton Homes.
Nice. Barbara from
They're
Clayton.
not a customer just yet.
Okay.
So, do a good job today. Maybe we can talk about it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate Barbara sharing your opinion. I think you nailed it right on the head in that the nuance between business divisions and especially industry can be there can be these huge differences, and AI models would take a long time to pick up on that.
You talk a lot about AI, but I'll tell you, your efficiencies will go up tremendously with their software, even without the AI. Just the configuration, right? You're checking against configuration models, which is not AI.
Mm-hmm.
And that then drives the auditor needs to look at 3 expense items, not 12.
I see. Yeah.
You instantly, the day you turn this on, you say,
Gotcha.
right?
I would agree.
To me, that's one of the huge benefits, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
something you guys do.
You're right, and those business rules, just directing human effort in a good way,
Correct.
kind of that needle in the haystack problem.
It is exactly the needle in the haystack.
Mm-hmm.
The needle, don't look at the haystack.
Yeah, ignore all this hay over there.
Don't look at you guys provide that benefit right there.
Yeah, some of the base.
Your customer, you'll benefit instantly.
No, I appreciate the feedback there. Yeah, there's definitely a needle in the haystack problem that even the base models are really good at detecting versus a human scanning thousands of expense reports or invoices. And then there's this quality of empathy. Has anyone talked to ChatGPT voice yet? Anyone? No? This has actually made huge strides. Like there's tonal things that humans do for empathy, and they're starting to mimic this actually in the voices that they used to dictate what ChatGPT is saying. So I've actually seen some interesting strides with empathy, but I think we can agree it's still squarely in the human camp. Like it doesn't understand us the way you might understand body language or tone. So how do we make sense of this AI workforce? Well, in the case of Appson, we focus exclusively on the finance vertical. So the first thing we want to do is just eliminate or heavily reduce time-consuming tasks. We work primarily with T&E and AP teams, but there's a lot of tasks across finance and IT that are very time-consuming and could be done very, very quickly by this AI workforce. So first thing we want to do is save time, give you some time back. The second thing we want to do is, and I think this AI workforce is really well suited depending on the various softwares you use, there's a right place and a right time to really surface a recommendation to the user. And AI is getting really, really good at that. Hey, are you sure you want to approve this? Hey, this looks out of line, kind of that prediction thing we talked about. So these optimizations can really empower and augment the human capital that you've already invested in. Some of the people in this room have 100-person teams. It gets really exciting when you think about all of them given AI superpowers to make better decisions in their day-to-day job. And if we do these two things, the third one is what I personally get really excited about, is that does everyone have that project on their to-do list that you know is high value, but it kind of keeps getting pushed to the next quarter, to the next quarter? I have a couple of those, I'm embarrassed to say. Our hope is that if you take the mundane stuff off the table, the folks on your team can have some cycles back to be like, I'm going to proactively think about our finance strategy or whatever their thing is. I get really excited, and we talk about office heroes, but we do think we're not here to like replace jobs. What we want to do is give them some time back and some cycles to think more strategically and play to some of those human strengths that this group really duly captured. So 4 things to prepare. This is kind of that framework that I want to put out there. As the wave of AI is cresting right now, I think we'd all be well suited to invest in upskilling. We don't want to be left behind. A lot of your softwares are already trying to integrate AI, and training the employees on these new tools is so critical to give them the nudge to not be left behind, because we want them to have those superpowers. There's also ethical considerations that might be germane to your specific company, your specific compliance and regulatory environment. That's super important as well. Oh, and one of our customers actually leveraged AI in their career paths. So if you have like job levels for your employees and you're trying to talk about, hey, where you want, you're doing like a career coaching conversation, we've seen some customers put certain AI skills in the job levels to give the employees a stretch goal, or like, how do I make it to the next level and get promoted? We've seen AI explicitly called out in career pathing, which I think is really interesting and one way to kind of institutionalize some of this. And last but not least, utilizing AI to enhance role efficiency. Just giving them some autonomy. Depending on your environment, there's a lot of free tools out there. I just made a deck. It took me 10 minutes using a tool called Gamma. Gamma is a tool that allows you to make PowerPoint decks with prompts, and it's pretty powerful. So just giving them some playground space to explore without the business risk, of course, but just taking it into account and like maybe giving them a little bit longer so they feel empowered to try out a lot of these new tools, because there's so many, and like our teams won't learn unless we try new things. I want to share a quick customer story about a really interesting way that a team invited AI onto their, in this case it's AP. So Denali, has anyone heard of Denali Therapeutics? They're a customer of ours we have the pleasure of serving. They make really tailored drugs for neurodegenerative diseases. These are really tricky diseases, and they make drugs to help often kids. It's actually kind of sad, but happy when Denali Therapeutics comes onto the scene. Long story short, we process, I think, 60% of their invoices for them autonomously. So the human does not, they just flow. And on the line item of how much was autonomously processed, they actually gave Appsen a name, and her name was Linda. And I asked, who's Linda? How did we come up with this name? And it stands for Lament Invoicing, Now Doing Automation. And I thought that was a clever acronym. Anyway, there's some of the stats here. I won't spend too much time on those. But I thought that was an interesting way to invite and kind of make the AI workforce feel a little bit more human, even though it's just a machine learning model running in the background. So they talk about Linda, and they're like, Linda had a really good day today. She processed 70 invoices. I thought that was somewhat novel, so I wanted to share it with all of you. We've seen some nice efficiency gains as well. They've cut their processing time in half on a per invoice basis. I wanted to end with two slides. One, a quote from KPMG, and then a book recommendation after this. One, it might feel like the AI wave is almost overwhelming. As Anant said, it's everywhere. But the way we work is going to influence AI. This is not a one-way road where everything's going to change. We're going to dictate the points in the adoption curve of AI. So I like this quote because it doesn't make it so like one-sided, like it's going to just side sweep everything. The way that we work, whether it's APIs or in product or the functionality, we're going to heavily influence how it's adopted, especially in large enterprises like the folks in this room. We have a strong say in the matter. And then last but not least, I'm a big book nerd. I wanted to recommend a book that I read a few months ago. It was published in September of 2023. So this is hot off the press. It's the best book I've read on this topic, and I've read a few. And there's a lot of books on AI right now, but this one's arguably the best. And I like it for two reasons. One, Mustafa is a founder of DeepMind. Has anyone heard of DeepMind? Google acquired DeepMind, and basically it became their AI team. One of the things Mustafa did early in his days was he built an algorithm called AlphaZero. AlphaZero was trained using self-play. Self-play is really interesting because you don't show the algorithm end tables or chess positions or anything. You just tell it the rules, and then the algorithm plays itself. AlphaZero, built by Mustafa and his team, achieved superhuman chess capabilities in 4 hours. Insane. And his technology and his team became like the Google and the Gemini products that we see today. So he wrote this book. He's a busy guy. I'm really glad he wrote it because he talks about the adoption curve, but he's also a pragmatist. And I like the quote in the middle here. He harkens back to John McCarthy, who coined the term AI. And he says, as soon as it works, no one calls it AI anymore. AI is, as those of us building us like to joke, what computers can't do. And once they can, they just call it software. So I thought that was kind of a grounding thing that like, we're going to adopt and get used to this new technology and hopefully incorporate it into our workflow and our workforce. So I highly recommend this book if you enjoy reading on this topic. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
1 minute.
1 minute?
Yeah.
Any questions on any of this stuff? Happy to flag one. Yes, question.
One of the tips you gave was training your workforce on AI. Do you have any trainings that you recommend with you offering to your customers?
We have trainings at AppSen for our tools specifically, but I was recommending something even broader. Are there other tools that you use that have embedded AI currently? Okay. The best classes I've personally found were on Khan Academy, and like how I kind of personally got up to speed was Khan Academy's courses on AI. Stanford offers a free course on Python, which is the language that's used to build almost all of this technology, Python. So it depends on like what functional department you are. Most of us are in finance, so there's also some great case studies and courses on Khan Academy and a few other sites about how AI makes you more efficient in spreadsheets. So, what's that? LinkedIn Learning, I'm so glad you brought that up. I love their stuff. I haven't used it specifically for AI, but is there some that you'd recommend?
Not that I can recall the titles of.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. It's an amazing, and coincidentally, LinkedIn Learning used to be called Lynda, what Denali Therapeutics called it. They rebranded it. Lynda was a separate company. LinkedIn acquired it. And LinkedIn Learning, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's fantastic as well. Does that answer your question a little bit? Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining today. I hope you enjoy the rest. Yeah, thanks.